So I've just spelt out, letter by letter, the thesis of my book. A is for addiction, R is for redistribution, M is for monopoly, A is for arteriosclerosis, G is for global retreat, E is for educational social engineering, D is for decay, D is for disintegration, O is for open season, N is for nukes away. Put them all together, they spell... Yes, A.R.M.A.G.E.D.D.O.N. From state-regulated lemonade sales to nuclear devastation, from fiscal ruin to planetary ruin in nothing flat. If you don't want that to happen, you need to get serious, and you need to demand your candidates get serious. It's not about putting John Kerry on a congressional supercommittee to report back about raising the age of Medicare eligibility from 65 to 67 in the year 2050. There isn't going to be a 2050 if that's the best John Kerry can do. The best he can do for America is to go and windsurf off Nantucket in that buttock-hugging yellow spandex. Boy, that got a bigger chair than the Tocqueville shtick. You don't be cruel to John Kerry. He thinks that buttock-hugging yellow spandex does wonders for his figure. I think he should windsurf off Nantucket till 2050. He's doing the least damage out there. Let's not let him make landfall till 2050, and we might just get out of this thing. Those of us on the receiving end of John Kerry's genius need to understand that it's not about mid-century, it's about mid-decade, it's about right now. The United States is still different. You know this. In the wake of the economic meltdown, the decadent youth of France rioted over the most modest of proposals to increase the retirement age. Elderly students in Britain attacked the heir to the throne's car over footling attempts to constrain bloated, wasteful and pointless university costs. Everywhere from Iceland to Bulgaria, angry mobs besieged their parliaments demanding the same thing. Why didn't you, the government, do more for me? America was the only nation in the developed world where millions of people took to the streets to tell the state, I can do just fine if you control freak statists would shove your non-stimulating stimulus, your jobless jobs bill, and your multi-trillion-dollar porkathons and just stay the hell out of my life and out of my pocket. That's the... That's the America that has a sporting chance. Even as America's spendaholic government outspends not only America's ability to pay for it, but by some measures the planet's, even as it follows Britain into the dank pit of transgenerational dependency and a failed education system and unsustainable entitlements, even as it makes less and less and mortgages its future to its rivals for cheap Chinese trinkets, most Americans, including far too many of my friends on the right, assume that simply because they're American, they're insulated from the consequences. I had this with my friends on Fox News last week when I said you couldn't seriously argue that we didn't deserve the downgrade. You couldn't seriously argue that this nation was AAA with $15 trillion worth of debt. And my friends on Fox News, the most right-wing guys in the American media, said, what do you mean? Of course we're AAA. We're better than AAA. We should have a quadruple A category just for us. These loser countries in the 18 countries in the AAA category. They're loser nations. They can't compare with us. We need to understand we are not AAA. When you've got $15 trillion in debt, you can't be AAA. When you've got 10 times that in unfunded liabilities, you can't be AAA. Cecil Rhodes, the great British imperialist, actually wasn't a great British imperialist, remarkably unpleasant man, but he did leave one memorable... Forgot where I was for a minute there. I got to remember, the Tocqueville shtick gets a big cheer in New Hampshire. The Cecil Rhodes cheer gets big cheers when you're in South Africa. I got to remember. I took the wrong assimilation pill before I walked on. Cecil Rhodes, the deplorable British imperialist, distilled the assumptions of generations when he said that to be born an Englishman was to win first prize in the lottery of life. And on the eve of the Great War, in his play Heartbreak House, George Bernard Shaw turned the thought around to taunt a ruling class too smug and self-absorbed to see what was coming. "Do you think," he wrote, "the laws of God will be suspended in favor of England because you were born in it?" In our time, to be born a citizen of the United States is to win first prize in the lottery of life. And as Britons did in Cecil Rhodes' day, too many Americans assume it will always be so. Do you think the laws of God will be suspended in favor of America simply because you were born in it? Think carefully about that question. When you live in the North Country, when you live in a state where the weather spends 6 months of the year trying to throttle the life out of you, one thing you understand is the fragility of civilization. Back in the spring, I was walking on an abandoned Class 6 road behind my house with my 2 boys one morning when we noticed a huge mama bear rearing up in the trees just off to our left. And then just ahead of us, we noticed one little cub, and behind us another little cub. And we were in the middle. And my boys were excited, but a little scared. And that's the way I feel as we embark on this critical half-decade. I feel excited, but a little scared. And I wonder if our society still has the survival instinct of that mother bear protecting her cubs. If you disagree, don't wait for a Messiah to descend from the heavens on a Tuesday morning in November. We tried that in 2008. We entrusted a multi-trillion-dollar enterprise to a guy who's never created a dime of wealth in his life, and then we were surprised that for some reason it didn't work out. This time it's up to you. Ordinary citizens need to do this year and next year, as they did in 2009, 2010, and move the meter of public discourse. In my book, I quote Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman says, "Don't elect the right people to do the right things. Create the conditions whereby the wrong people are forced to do the right things." Every time, that deserves a chair. There should be nothing controversial in that, because he's absolutely, every time you see Obama go and give a speech and someone has taken the precaution of loading up some lame boilerplate into his prompter about how we need to get our fiscal house in order and we need to control the deficit. The only reason he's even pretending to care about it is because the meter of public discourse was moved in 2009 and 2010. He's the wrong person being forced to pretend that he wants to do the right thing. Let's keep changing the discourse until the wrong people are actually forced to do the right thing. Milton Friedman is right about that. When I first moved to New Hampshire, I carelessly assumed that General Stark had said live free or die before some battle or other. I thought it was a bit of red meat to rally the boys for the charge, a touch of the old, Henry V at Agincourt routine. And then I discovered that our state's great Revolutionary War hero had made his creed occur decades after the cessation of hostilities in a letter regretting that he would be unable to attend a dinner. And in a strange way, I found that even more impressive, because in extreme circumstances, many of us can rouse people to rediscover the primal impulses in the way that the brave men on Flight 93 did. They took off on what they thought was a routine commuter flight, and when they realized it wasn't, they went into General Stark mode and cried, "Let's roll." But it's harder to maintain that live free or die spirit when you're facing not an immediate crisis, but just a slow, unceasing ratchet effect, which is, in stable societies, unthreatened by revolution or war within their borders, always the way liberty falls, traded away to the state incrementally, painlessly, all but imperceptibly. Live free or die sounds like a battle cry. We'll win this thing or we'll die trying. Die an honorable death, but in fact it's a prosaic statement of the obvious, of the reality of our lives in the prosperous West. You can live as free men, but if you choose not to, your society will surely die. Live free or die. It's New Hampshire's choice. It's America's choice. So make the right call, because the fate of our world depends upon it. Thank you very much indeed.
You can step back if you like. And go out back.
For more information on Mark Steyn and his work, visit steinonline.com.